cost of living, we see this phrase in the media very often, the cost of living crisis. And we can understand this crisis as being people's incomes, whether that's income from work, income from benefits, income from pensions. They're not keeping pace with the increase in everyday goods and services that people will need to buy. To kind of understand what this picture looks like for people, you need to think about how it's affecting people across the income distribution. So if you're someone who spends the majority of your budget on things that there's not much wiggle room on, so your housing, your fuel, your food, if the cost of those items are going up, that's putting much more pressure on your budget, or it's making your budget sort of unmanageable compared to someone who's higher up the income distribution, who has a smaller proportion of their income going on those sorts of items, where then you've got that wiggle room where maybe you can be making decisions to save less money, and then you can be spending that money on your fuel or your extra food costs, or you can be making decisions on more negotiable items, like maybe you change your holiday choice, for example. But that's looking really different across the income distribution. So for low income households and middle income households in particular, there's not the same sort of ability to make those changes. You're having to make different sorts of choices. There's been this debate about uprating of benefits and how much and how that works. So the way it typically works is that inflation figures for the year are released in September, and then benefits the next year in April. That's when that inflation figure is applied. But obviously with the rate of inflation increasing so quickly at the moment, that means that it can be really out of sync. So this year, for example, in April, benefits were increased by 3.1%. Inflation at that time was around 9%. So already it was lagging behind. I think as well there's this a kind of big decisional way of thinking about it is, do we target specifically the key things that are inflationary, so fuel costs, or do we think about what we really need to target are households that are going to be feeling that kind of the most? And I think the second option means that maybe you're reaching households that are going to find it most difficult to kind of cope with or absorb those shocks.